Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're talking about the movie Turning Red. Is a latest Pixar animation movie, and it's on Disney Plus, so you guys can go and watch it there if you haven't seen it. Because we are going to be going into spoiler territory here, so if you haven't seen it, go check it out first, and then come back and watch our show. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. This movie was another one that Cheryl recommended on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/C3Films, by the way, that I actually didn't know about. I hadn't heard about it or anything. Cheryl mentioned wanting to watch it, and I made a joke about not wanting to watch it or and whatnot. But she explained to me what the why the movie was important for her for us to watch it. So it was like, okay, sure, why not? But I had no expectations. No expectations going into this movie. I saw the giant red panda thing, and I was like, okay, I don't get it, but we'll see. And this was another movie that caught me completely off guard, and I did not expect to like it as much as I ended up liking it.
Yeah, I feel the same. I kind of just watched it just because, it was there. And I knew that it was Asian themed, specifically Chinese, actually, specifically Cantonese, which
Cantonese,
is
yeah.
even more so relatable to me. It just feels like it was directed towards me and people like me, um, which is basically American born um, Chinese females. And that's something that never happens. So having a movie out there like this, even though it's an animation, just feels really nice because I felt like I could relate to so many things in the movie. It just felt like my culture, my childhood on blast. And I don't know, it was just really nice to have that out there.
Yeah, for sure. Like watching that movie, I watched it with my roommate, and we were both surprised at the moment. We were surprised because of a couple of things, but we were surprised at how in your face the message of puberty was at the first point when she transformed into the red panda, and the mom is talking about how she thought it was something else, and I was just like, oh, we're not worried about this at all. We're just going for it. And my roommate loved it. She was so happy because she was saying, yeah, this is what it's like. This is what happens. And me, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I grew up for as a guy, I grew up so much not even knowing that this was a thing, right? I didn't even know that this was something that girls had to go through until well into my teens. And so I thought it was kind of cool that they didn't shy away from, yeah, this is reality. I mean, this is a children's animation that is actively talking about how a girl's body changes when they get older, but it's under the backdrop of giant red panda, and that's fun.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of little details that I feel like you can really only appreciate if you are from that culture. And we're gonna talk about Encanto later, but
Mm.
after watching Turning Red and then watching Encanto, I just kind of wondered how that movie was going to be relatable to people from that culture. But there's just so many little details from the temple. I remember going to the temple with my mom and praying to our ancestors, so to say. Even right now, my grandparents have a photo in the temple with the little card there. So that's right out of our culture. And then there's even the whole thing about four being a bad number, an unlucky number. And for those who don't know why, it's because the number four sounds like if you say the number four in Cantonese, it sounds very, very similar to the word to die. So that's why it's a very unlucky number. Red is lucky. I know you've learned that from me already.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
thought that was a really cool theme that they had there. Even down to this isn't necessarily part of our culture, but that when the dad's like cooking, which by the way, the animation for the cooking was amazing, but it
Oh,
made me hungry.
salivated.
But his like glasses got steamy, and like, and then he was like, oh, and he had to like wait for it to unseam. Constant issue, especially when you're wearing a mask these days and you have glasses. So I thought that was hilarious. Like you can't wear glasses when you're eating soup, like hot soup. Like I had to take them off because I can't see my food. There's no point in wearing glasses. But just like little details like that, I just feel like this movie was so well thought out because it's sprinkled with all these little details.
Yeah, I 100%. And there's things that I mean I completely forgot about the whole thing with four being an unlucky number. So now that joke at the end where the grandmother turns around with her four necklace and says unlucky, like now it makes sense to me because at first I was just like, oh, I thought she was saying unlucky because she was losing at at the game that she was playing, but
Yeah.
100%. Like, but yeah, like the red thing, like you taught me, and yeah, and then there's just so the things that I was able to like really enjoy that wasn't necessarily tied to like the culture that the story was wrapped around was the relationship with her friends. Her friends, like Maymay's friends, were really, really cool people. Like I love her friends, specifically the girl who just was way too energetic all the time.
The
But
Korean girl.
yes, she was amazing. And that one part in the movie where she literally starts just shouting in Korean because she got the date wrong for when the boys' concert was going to be there, I thought was prime 100% golden and great. Um, but yeah, I like that. There's other things that were in there that I've seen with other friends and everything like that, like how the mom was saying that this one friend was a bad influence, despite the fact that the friend hasn't done anything really. Um, and then even, I mean, I like can relate to this a little bit where the certain music choices or the music that the child might be into is referred to as not good or trash or anything else like that. Why would you like that? I think that's something that a lot of different cultures can go through, but that's also very relatable. And I just in general just so was surprised at how much I enjoyed the time period that the movie is set in because there isn't a time card at the beginning of the movie. It doesn't actually actively date itself until the end. But when I'm watching it, I'm like, I see flip phones. I think that's a Tamagotchi. This is either the 90s or early 2000s. This is when I was growing up. What's going on here? This movie has to be taking place during that time frame, and then you find out at the end it takes place in 2002, which is
Yeah, 100%.
amazing.
I mean, yeah, the Tamagotchis, and then there's the boy band, of course, a five
Right?
boy band. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing like the another big thing that really stood out to me was the relationship between the mom and the daughter, and then the mom and her mother,
Yeah.
because that's a very I think common thing in a Asian culture is you always kind of have that you know overbearing Asian mother kind of thing. And there's different levels to the overbearingness and different relationships that people have with their parents. Of course, every family is different, but there's always that like one thing that you have in common, and that's just that it's hard to like be open about who you are to your mother, and it goes the same way. Like that your mother has a certain relationship with her mother, and like every time, like every generation going down, um, the child is trying to make it different with uh, their I guess their child,
Their
so that
child. Yeah.
they don't have to go, like they don't want their kid to go through the same thing that they went through, and I can see that happening in this movie. So I don't know, I really felt like that resonated in me a lot. Just
Yeah,
that
it's
whole
interesting because
relationship.
yeah, like it's this idea that we end up making the mistakes of our parents in an effort to not be our parents. We somehow become them. And like, the mom was felt all this pressure from her mom and didn't want to do that to her daughter, but then ended up doing that exactly to her daughter, to the point where her daughter, like, she and her friends, they wanted to go to the concert in a legit way, but all their parents said no. And in the case of Mei Mei, she's asking herself, like, wait, why is this the case when I'm perfect all the time and I never ask for anything? And the one time I ask for something is just a hardcore no. Like, what's the point in doing all these good things if nothing good can come from it at the end of the day? And so, like, I love the moment. I love the conflict overall at the end, but I just love that moment when you get to really understand how this pain can trickle down. And we're going to be also talking about, like you mentioned, Encanto later, and when there's a really big presence of the grandmother in that movie, and it's a little bit more so pronounced than it is in this movie. But the thing about this movie is just that the presence is still felt. You feel the pain, you feel the pressure that the mom went through, even though it is all off screen. We don't see it, but you know that it was there, and you see little interactions with the mom and the grandmother, and you can sense it. And then the father also talks about how they got into a fight and it was about him. That's also something that I've experienced or seen with different friend groups, and how, like, their mothers or their parents weren't approved by their grandmothers or grandparents. And, like, this is all, like, really interesting and very cool dynamics to play with in a movie. And so at the end of the day, I love the fact that the movie is about the relationships between the women in a family, but also how, like, the relationship between a grandmother and the mom of, like, a child, and then having their own child, can just trickle down to where the same mistakes keep happening, because of the fact that I mean, I don't know. I guess people just end up falling into them in an effort to try not to make the same mistakes so hard, because they know how it made them feel.
I mean, I think it's just kind of, I guess in a sense, the need to try to control something, not just, a person, but a situation. And the minute you
Right.
start to do that, when you're trying to just really control anything, that's when, people who are not agreeing with you, who are not liking the rules that are being laid down, will start
Mhm.
to like do things in secret, and that's a really easy plot to put down in like any show. It's like every family sitcom. The kids just do things in secret because they weren't allowed to do it, and that's
Right.
like part of the thing that I really liked at the end, where Maylee's just like, I'm 13, deal with it. I'm gonna do what I want to do, and that's kind of like a right uh, of like a rite of passage for, I think, every kid, where they're just like, at
Right.
some point you get to tell your parents, like, listen, I'm not a baby anymore. And
Right.
like I feel
I
like we
mean,
never get that in movies.
no, true. I feel like I probably could have done without the gyrating 13-year-old, but I do
I
understand.
mean,
But I
it's
understand what
not coming from, a place of fiction.
you,
These are really how 13-year-olds are. I mean, yes, it is a bit
no,
exaggerated, but I remember being like that. I
like,
remember like chasing boys and like, just like, oh boy, just like how she is in the movie. Like every time she sees a boy, she's like, oh. I mean, like that's a very exaggerated thing, but it's like it's not
right.
untrue.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, I know, like, I've seen some of the things that 13-year-olds do now, and it's like, oh wow, we've elevated, huh? But
My,
yeah,
we've
like,
grown.
right. And so I guess there's, like, overall, I don't have a problem with, like, how things are handled with the relationship between the mom and the daughter in the movie. And I love the scene at the end where she picks her mom up who as a child, like as a teenager, and then we she walks, and then her mom gets older and older. Also, I love the red hair. Um, but I think the only thing I was just like, I couldn't help but feel that I'm like, May, you're not entirely in the right though. Your mom does need to like let you breathe, but you're also still her child. You're also still, and you don't know everything because you can't. You say I'm 13, deal with it. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, you're 13. You're still dumb. You're gonna probably be dumb until you're in your 20s. So
Or even your
like
30s.
yeah, even in your 30s. So I was just like, so like overall, I love the interactions and I love the balance of how everything is handled. There was just this small, very small gnawing element in the back of my mind that was just kind of like having a felt myself having a little bit of pushback towards some of the things that May was doing, or the how aggressive she was being in wanting to do these things. Because in my mind, I'm like thinking, yeah, I the concert's not a big deal. Like, why shouldn't you go to the concert? But then the other side of my mind, it's like, wow, you're causing a lot of issues with your family just because you want to go to a concert. That's like, part of me is just like, I get it, but I can't shake the feeling that there's a part of me that's like, it's just a little bit selfish, but and I get like that's the kind of like balance that we have to strike, right? It's like she's got to be free to be able to be herself and to do what she wants to do outside of the commitments to her family, to her mom, and what have you.
Yeah, I mean, kids have priorities and they're gonna do what they want to do, and especially the older they get. And, I feel like, uh, I mean, I'm not a parent, but as a parent, I would probably want to know what, you know, the kids are doing.
Fair enough.
And to be able to have that relationship, you have to allow them to open up to you. And the way you do that is to listen to them and
Mm.
negotiate with them, work with them on it. But if you always say no and you always like you have a lot of rules and you're very controlling, then you're not gonna get any information. You're always gonna be in the dark. There's always gonna be secrets. And
Yeah,
and you set that line up, and that's exactly what both parents did. Um, and so it ends up breaking relationships.
yeah, and like that was another part that I mean that part just really stuck out to me where I was like, man, that's lame. They tried to do it the right way. They tried to be honest about it, and like there's something that they really wanted to do, and when they were denied, they're like, well, screw it, we're gonna find a way to do it anyway. So now we're doing it in secret. If you had just said yes, then a lot of the issues that happened in the movie could have been avoided. Um, so and that's like and
Yeah.
that's the real irony of
It is.
that
It's
entire
real life,
situation.
though. It really is. Like stuff like that happens in real. I mean, not like that to that extent of chaos and destruction, but like I said, people will do what they want to do, but whether or not you know it is up to you.
It's up to you,
How you
right?
handle
And
that.
yeah, and um maybe a better approach would have been to listen to the music, like to actually listen to the music, so you can at least know what your daughter is listening to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
But just going back to the red hair comment that you made, I kind
mhm.
of liked that too, but at the same time, I didn't. I felt a little. I felt a little off about it because, I mean, we have black hair, and because like she spent like essentially the entire movie with red hair, and so
Mhm.
I feel like that was a little off putting for me because like that I feel like that wasn't completely necessary. I thought it was a fun
Mm.
idea, um, especially with red being a lucky color and everything, and it does have to do with like red panda and everything. But
Mhm.
but I just would rather see them with the natural hair color because in a time where we don't get to see ourselves on the big screen very often, it just, I just would have liked to see her with black hair, everyone with black hair. At least the Chinese people.
I completely understand. Like for me, the red hair wasn't an issue, but also, I can understand where you're coming from because you're bringing up one of my biggest issues with the Frog Princess and like how brown people can be depicted in certain movies. And in case of the Frog Princess, where she spends most of the movie as a frog, and you're like, I would like to see her as herself. So like, I get that that's what the hair is like for you.
Yeah,
You
and
kind of just want to see
Soul
her with
too.
her hair. You
Yeah,
said what?
and the same thing for Soul, where he spends
Yeah.
most of the time as a white blob.
Right. So yeah, I 100% I get it. So no, for fair enough. Um, I was also pleasantly surprised by how much fun I had in the movie. How I legit laughed my way through this entire movie. Like the movie is funny. It is it is fun and it is funny and it might be my personality, but the every like all the jokes, the things that happen, like the movie started off, I was a little put off. It just felt a little too like ADD, like too like kinetic, like I'm this and this, and things are moving fast, and people are like going all over the places, and there's so many cuts, and I'm just like, whoa, can we slow down? Can I get to know you guys? But as the movie continued, and it kind of fell into a rhythm and a pace, um, I was along for it the entire time, and the movie to me is paced very well. It's about an hour and 30 minutes long before credits, and like there was no point in the movie where I'm looking at the time. I'm just kind of like along for the ride, and it's a very enjoyable ride for me.
Yeah, I definitely was having fun. I mean, most of the time I was just like, I just felt like it sat so close to home in so many aspects. Like, I keep mentioning all the little things, but even like I just even remember, even to this day, I will go home and hang out with my mom, and I kid you not, we will watch Chinese dramas and talk about it.
Right,
So,
and that happened in the movie too. I remember that.
exactly. But there's even like the little things a little different because usually, I guess like another thing that I really, really appreciate about the film is that it centers around the females, um, and the female characters, and the relationships that we have with our mothers. Usually, it's all about the boy. Even in Asian films, Asian movies and stuff, it's always about the boy. Um, and there's also that same dynamic where, the boy, the son, can do no wrong. But the daughters always get, like, they never hear the end of it. Daughters, like, never get away with anything. And so, in this sense, it was a little different because Maylee can do no wrong. Her mother always blames other people for things that happen, and that's how usually the boys are treated. Like,
Interesting.
like I know some families where, they have a son and a daughter, and the son never gets in trouble, but the daughter always gets in trouble. And even though the son does a lot of like bad things. So it's kind of like that is a little bit different for me in this movie, but I still like how we get to see that aspect of like parenting, or like the views of an Asian parent um, for their kids, like they can do no wrong kind of thing. It was a little different because as a female I don't really see that. I'm not really familiar with that kind of relationship where the mother can look at the daughter and be like, everyone else is wrong except for her. That never
Mm.
happens.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I know that my friend who it belongs to a Puerto Rican family. It was similar for her. Um, the Not only was the boy the youngest, but he also obviously was a boy, and he could do no wrong, while the two older daughters would constantly not be allowed to go out, not be allowed to do this, not be allowed to do that. But then the youngest boy could do all those things, and the mom and the grandmother had no issues with it. And like
Mm-hmm.
meanwhile, the older daughters are kind of just scratching their heads, like, but we couldn't do any of that. So that's definitely something that is prevalent across cultures, which I think is unfortunate. But I think, like you said, it's nice to see. It's nice to see a different way that like the relationship between like parents and their daughters can be portrayed in this movie. And I also really like the fact that the scene with the dad. I like the fact that the dad's not in the movie that much, but I'm glad that the movie doesn't just treat him like he doesn't exist, because that is also something that, I mean, in my experience, I don't see too much in movies where you do have like all the families. You don't really see how the fathers can connect with their children, male or female. Most of the time in movies about black children, the father is dead or gone. So like, I always like it when, even if the father isn't a heavy presence in the movie, that he's still a positive presence in the movie. So I appreciated that relationship that he had with his daughter too.
Mm-hmm. Funny enough, I feel like the father was depicted very accurately as well, in the sense of, the common, usual Asian family, because usually the dads are like, oh, well, the mom is the strict one, and the dad's
Right.
usually like laid back, kind of go with the flow kind of thing. And that's very, it just I don't know. I think they did a really good job of depicting a typical Asian family, except for the fact that they didn't have a son. Like, it's
Mm.
not common for an Asian family to only have a daughter and no sons.
Stop at the girl.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's what I mean. Like, you have aspects of the family, but the women are really brought to the foreground, and that's what I appreciate, because they're still showing, a typical Asian family, and there's some, parts with the men, and how like I said, the idea of like the boys cannot do anything wrong, but then it's kind of shifted onto the daughter, and now it's like having that relationship of a parent and child, but it's placed in the female aspect of it
Mm.
and being applied to a female. And so I feel like I just feel very represented across the board for this. So
100%. It's the one other thing, like last little thing I want to bring up was, I thought that it was interesting that they never actively told the truth about who May saw in order to calm herself. Like, it seemed like it was leaning in that direction where the mom would find out that May was always imagining her friends, but they actually never then that was never brought up. As far as the truth was never brought up. There are two times in the movie where it happens, where the first time when she's like, I imagine the people that I love, and the mom's like, oh, you imagine me. And then in the middle of the movie, so, like nearing towards the end, the final act, where the mom says, oh yeah, she imagines me. And then May's like, yeah, I do. There's never that never comes to a head. That never comes to a reckoning of them having the mom have to deal with the fact that, like, look, when I think about who I love the most, it's not you, it's my friends. And then, like, how do we navigate that? And like, even talking about it, like, that is a challenging thing, right? Because it's your mom. Um, and you want to love your mom. Um, so yeah, so I thought it was interesting that they never actively, since they brought it up twice, that they never actively resolved that lie.
yeah, I mean, I don't think there would have been a good way to resolve that, actually.
It
So I
was
am kind of glad that they didn't bring that up again, or try to resolve it, because they would have had to do a lot of extra thing to try to make it work. Like, she'd have to have some kind of realization, or some kind of like crazy bond with her mom that would put her mom like beyond over her friends, and that was never gonna happen for her teenage character. So I don't
No.
know. Maybe if there's like a part two and she becomes adult, then that can change. Um, but even like you said earlier when we were talking about Adam Project, when we get older, we form a more friendly relationship with our parents where we're not really. I mean, we'll always be parent and child, but the older we get, the more we become friends with them because we're adults now, so we can just be friends, and there's really no more parenting quite
Mm.
involved. I mean, there is always going to be some of that, but
Always a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think like going off what you said, I think at the end of the day that it rings more realistic because most of the time, like even thinking back on me, to me, I don't know if I loved my friends more than my mom, but I can definitely connect to the fact that I definitely enjoyed my friends more than my mom. So like the fact that the movie ends and it's still firmly rooted in that um is real. It's very realistic. It's like, hey, that's not going to change overnight. That, like you said, changes with time, and that's not time that we're observing within this movie. So the most important thing is the fact that the mom and the daughter found some common ground and they're able to work it out.
yeah. And just
So
real quick, before we wrap things up, I just wanted to point out again how amazing I thought. Like, I didn't even really think about how much women were put in the foreground of the movie until really we started talking about it today. But it's
mhm.
even down to the the supporting characters. All of her friends are girls. And then
Yeah,
the grandma and the aunties are all the ones, and even the curse, or so to say, the gift cursed is only applied to the women. And so all
right.
the aunties come to help, and I actually thought that scene was hilarious because when the aunties come, you cancel your plans. When the aunties and
Yep.
elders come, you cancel your plans. So I thought that was great, and I can't appreciate it enough. If you didn't know, the director is an Asian female, which I think is amazing. So it's
It
just
shows.
yeah, it really does show.
So yeah, all right. Well, that's what we thought about Turning Red. Like we love the movie. What did you guys think about Turning Red? Did you see it? Did you enjoy it? Did you also feel the culture that the movie was wrapped around? Did you feel how Cheryl did about the women being pushed to the forefront? Did you just generally enjoy like the relationships that were on display? Whatever you thought about it, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, and subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we'll see you all next time.